already? No. 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 All right.
You were gonna TP him one night.
It could be. All right. Oh, they're recording. All right, I'd like to call to order the regular governing board meeting. The time is 7:01. Let the record show that all board members are present. Please stand for the pledge.
Fisher?
Oh, I'm sorry, minus Mrs. Fisher is not present. 4 board members are present. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move we adopt the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Oh, aye. Sorry.
Okay. All right, motion carries 4-0. We are off to a good start. So we'll begin with governing board reports. Let's mix it up since I always start with Mrs. Ordway. Mrs. O'Brien, would you like to start tonight?
Well, do I really have a choice?
You always have a choice.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. I'd be happy to start. I was able to attend, actually, as the ASBA secretary, several county meetings these last couple of weeks, one in Pinal, one in Yavapai, and one in Pima County. And it was great to get to network and meet with all the other governing board members from those counties, some of whom we don't get to see at some of the larger conferences that happen here in Phoenix. And so that was very nice to get to do. A little Friday Night Lights at O'Connor this last Friday, and they fought hard against Chaparral. It was a nail biter at the very end, so nice job, boys, and otherwise. And I'm so excited to see our scores on Friday, our AZ Merit scores. So I look forward to getting the breakdown from Dr. Smith later on, and maybe Dr. Finch a little bit tonight. So thank you, and I hope everybody enjoyed their fall break.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien. Ms. Tweedy.
I thought the letter grades, that was great too. So congratulations to all the schools. They did a wonderful job, and everyone that, put forth effort to make that happen. And I have no other report.
Mrs. Ordway.
Is
It's
it my
your turn.
Okay, so we've got the Friday Night Lights, which have been awesome. And we have an O'Connor parade tomorrow. Friday we have a Deer Valley parade. And the awesome thing about those parades is that the feeder schools line the sidewalk along with community members, and it's just beautiful. I did want to also just real quick make a request. It's not an agenda request. I think it's a request from Dr. Finch to figure this out if you can, or something, a plan for this. But we have many teachers that go to Donors Choose. And some things are very detailed to a specific something that they want to do. But there are also some that are throughout. So we have a few teachers that are looking for headphones for their classes, or for their students, so they can not be impacted by the sound of others reading to themselves in the room. And apparently, we have more than one. So I didn't know if there's some kind of a repository, some way that you can get teachers to say, hey, I'm looking Donors Choose for this, and maybe when you look at it, there are a number of them for the same thing, and then you research it and see if it's something that then becomes an expense that we incur because they are something that's going to push student achievement. Because right now I think I've seen 4 or maybe 5 teachers that are looking for these headphones, and they're like $10 a piece. So, and Jim's looking at me. So, no, I was just saying the budget. And the other question I had was our 7th and 8th grade sports, and this is just a question. I did not realize that that we did not, or that there's a small budget for all of their sports, and I think it's $1,000, and I think that just started. Jim, is that? I know I'm asking Jim. It's somewhere around there. Anyway, I don't know how the gate receipts work for them, but I know that if one team on a campus would need uniforms, it would have to cost more than $1,000, and there's more than one team on a campus. So it's just something I wanted to have a breakdown, because I know that we do help high schools. So I just wanted to see what we're doing for 7th and 8th grade, because those are also popping up on Donors Choose to purchase the balls that they used to play with. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Ordway. Well, I had the pleasure of hosting a STEM class, 15 students from Sonoran Foothills, today down at the Air Monitoring Division warehouse. And I was very proud to say that I was associated with Deer Valley. The students had excellent questions. They brought posters of air monitors that they had designed. The favorite of the air monitoring engineers was called the Suckinator. Nice. It sucks in that air. And so it was a great morning. And Marianne Colley, who was honored tonight, was the teacher. They represented the district quite well. And that's it for my report.
Nice. Mrs. Frank, could you repeat what that was called again?
The Suckinator.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't know if I heard it. Thank you.
Our air monitoring engineers especially liked the title. Good marketing, they said.
Yes.
Well, now you have board members that love it too.
Okay.
Nice.
Dr. Finch.
A couple things. Yes, we are excited too about the scores that came out. Our 5-year march is to obviously have 100% A and B schools. We are nipping at the heels of Gilbert, who is number 1, and we're number 2 by a couple tenths. And Dr. Scott will be talking about that in a minute. But that's our goal. And so we moved forward and trying to overtake number 1. We're working on it. And obviously, as Ms. Tweedy said as well, principals are a major piece of that as we guide and direct our staff in the same direction. So good news, we're moving in the right direction. So bonus there. The Donors Choose and the Friday or the 7th grade, 8th grade sports, we can do that in a Friday update and give you an update. Just to let you know, Donors Choose is a dragon we're trying to corral because there's obviously issues with it. My general philosophy on it is to do it site-based. So it has to run through the principal, etc. It has to be part of where the school is going. But we are starting to make more rules around those things just because of liability, etc.
Right. Well, I'm
I'm
glad that you're doing that, but that was my point. My point was just to see if there's so many, or if there's enough,
right,
that would constitute something that we would provide as opposed to asking for. That was
some
it. I didn't want
organization
anybody
too.
to have rules.
Yep.
It was a consistent need.
Correct.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Across multiple schools and classrooms.
Yep. And it's actually very popular around the country. We're not the first school to do it. So, but yeah, we need a bigger, higher fence around it. So, but we're working on it. But so we'll give it to you in a Friday update on kind of the latest. Also, too, the forum went well last week. I think it was last Tuesday, for our candidates on the dais here. I think everybody survived. I heard that was good. Mission accomplished. She made it
still
back.
here.
Yeah, she made it back. Good. And so that went well. Thanks to our PTAs, our parent-teacher organizations, PTOs did a nice job organizing that, and Monica helped a little bit, getting guided in the right direction. And so good job there. And so November 6th is the big day. TikTok. That's it for me.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Finch. Mr. Miglerino, Fiscal and Business Services reports.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, we have 3 reports to share with you this evening. We'll start with the student enrollment report, and we do have a celebration here as well when it comes to student enrollment. We remember, our demographer has suggested that we would be declining in students this year, and we've built that into our budget as well, slight decline. But as of the last several weeks, we're actually showing an increase year over year when it comes to students. This report that's in the board packet was for day 35, September 27th, and we have a slight increase of about 59 students, or 0.2% more than we had a year ago at the same time. So that is something that is notable. We're seeing a lot of that growth in the elementary grade levels. And so there's good news that comes with that, and there are some challenges, of course, that come with that as well. And we'll certainly have opportunities to talk to the board about that as time goes on. But I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the student enrollment report before I move on to the financials.
Go ahead, Mrs. O'Brien.
Mr. Maglarino, do we have any idea of those some of those elementary students that are coming to us? Are they new students because we have all of the building going on, or are they students that are returning from, they were with us, left, and come back?
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, yes, we have exit and entry data based on specific codes that the state requires us to submit, and we look at that data monthly to be able to see where that's. Some of that is voluntarily provided by the parents, and some of it is based on what we learn from a records request that comes from another school, for example. And the majority of it is change of residence. So it's new people moving into the district or people that moved out on the exit side. So we look at both sides, entry and exits.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, the second report happens to be the financial reports for the month of September. And I'll just highlight the M&O report. It's showing a projected carry forward of just under $175,000. And that's trending below where we were a year ago. So a year ago we were just under $261,000. But remember, I mentioned that we built our budget based on a projected decline of students, about half of a percent, or 0.5. So the budget that's represented here would be if we didn't have as many students as we currently have. So when we go to revise our budget, and if the enrollment numbers trend the way they have, our budget will increase, and then therefore our projected carry forward may increase as well. As I mentioned, there are some challenges when we have more students. So some of the reason why we're seeing a smaller projected carry forward without the budget revision that we're anticipating is due to the fact that we have to staff appropriately for those additional students that we weren't initially projecting to have at some of our campuses. So there's good news and bad news with that, right? So just a year-over-year comparison I don't think would be fair, because our budget will change. Remember, we are on current year funding, so again, another reason for us to pay close attention to those student enrollment numbers. And that will change well even beyond our 100th day, which is the funding day, the day that we get funded for the average daily membership. But adjustments are made to ADM all the way into the summer. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about the September financial.
Mrs. O'Brien?
And this is kind of related to student enrollment as well, I guess. Can we have a report regarding our vacancies? I was trying to remember the last time we saw an updated HR report that showed us, how many vacancies we have and where they are located at this point in the year.
Staff members, teachers, or
certified. Okay. Yeah, certified, related. So
yeah, we have it.
Classroom.
We can put in Thursday update. Yep.
Oh, I guess
We can.
Okay.
Yep.
You can put it in the
yeah,
Thursday update.
sure.
Okay, it wasn't something I missed. All right, thank you.
Yep, Jen is on it.
Ms. Tweedy, did you have a question?
Yes, my question was, I guess, similar, but where it shows the expenses and then the amount remaining, the continued balance for certified staff and classified staff contracts, are those the totals because of unfilled positions?
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, yes. So the encumbrance column will be all the contracts that we have issued that have not been paid. So we haven't cycled through all the pay periods. The committed budget balance would be for positions that are vacant that we expect to fill, that we're still attempting to fill, and the remaining balance ends up being what's projected not to be spent on that particular line. So certified staff contracts, we're expecting a vacancies or a position savings of $63,658 at this point in time.
So the committed balances are for contracts that are unfilled, or did I misunderstand you? I'm just trying to make sure I'm reading this
No,
right.
that is correct.
Okay.
Those are unfilled positions or are part of the contingency budget that we have yet to allocate.
All right, thank you.
So then I have a question. So the money that is not being spent because of positions that are unfilled, what happens to that sum of money? Does it just roll back into M&O, or does it become part of the carry forward?
President Frank, that's correct. It would become part of the carry forward into next year. So
Okay.
it would be part of our plans. And later in the agenda, we're going to talk about the annual financial report and talk about our projected carry forward actually even increasing from what we projected into this year as a result of that very same thing.
Okay. And Ms. Tweedy has another question.
I'm trying to remember what you said because you have answered this a long time ago. The results-based funding the district received is not in here, right? It's not reflected in our budget, you said?
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, this is just the M&O report.
Okay.
Results-based funding, it has its own separate fund number, so it's not included in this $214 million that you see here.
Have you done? Has anyone done anything with that? I just never heard anything on that.
Yeah, actually, we had a very good discussion about that today. We had an NST meeting, and we're still working on a plan. And so the framework of that plan, and this is hot off the press, so if it was in hard copy form, you would be able to smear the ink. It's that fresh. Is to come up with a per pupil allocation that we would establish to the schools and include like a poverty weight in that per student allocation. So there'd be a differentiated amount maybe to our Title I schools, for example. And then having the schools pick from a laundry list of choices of how they would spend that money to address student achievement needs on their campus. Have that approved as maybe even they might consider something outside of the box that we would have in like a pre-canned list of options for them to select from, and then allocate those funds in that manner. This is just in its infancy of being developed. We've had a number of conversations about this, but no plan has evolved from that because there are the spirit of the law is to be able to replicate the success, the student achievement success at other locations, and we think from the discussions today, we think this gives some opportunity at the school level to choose where that might have the greatest impact on their campus. So we have a lot of work left to do, and just to put it into context, it's a little over $1.1 million in the results-based funding that we have, and that's not including the money that we will receive when they finalize the results-based funding from last year. So we have an amount that's amassed from 2 years ago. We'll have last year's money when that gets finalized from the state. So we do need to come up with a plan for that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Miglorino.
Okay, the third report. I don't want to move on.
Oh, good. I thought there was another one coming.
Hearing no other questions regarding the September financials, I'll move quickly through the bond and M&O override report. And this is required via statute to do at a public meeting. We elect each year to do this at a board meeting to certainly validate all that we know that is necessary on our part for transparency to share with our public how we spend those voter-approved initiatives. So specifically the bond that was authorized in 2013 and our M&O override. And so that's what this report is intended to do. In addition to this report, our Communications and Community Engagement Department issues the special report to the community that we send to all residents, all homeowners in the district, to kind of also encapsulate some of this information. So there are some timing issues when it comes to the actual reporting. Again, this is required by statute, so This is required as of June 30th, so it coincides with our end of our fiscal year. And you can see these are the categories that are in the voter-approved authorization. And you can see what percentage has been spent within each of those categories. This is a little bit misleading because a lot of the work happens over the summertime, and due to the timing of some of that work, we've spent a lot more than 50% of the $158 million authorization, but those things did not get realized by June 30th because of the timing of when some of that work was completed, even the work that was done this summer. So a great deal, for example, of the Arrowhead modernization project is not reflected in these numbers, and will be when we do this report a year from now. As again, we do this annually as required by statute. You can see there's a couple categories here that we have not spent a great deal of money on, and you can see one of the greatest categories happens to be new construction and student growth. There's $18 million in there, and we've done a very small amount in terms of some planning for if that becomes realized. This is just that same information, just graphically represented. Had to throw a pictorial representation in there just for fun. And then here are some specifics that were actually of dollars that were spent, and then whether or not the project is completed or not. And the only completed project that we have that's part of the bond authorization, because many of the things that were approved were not a singular project, but the only one that's completed to this date is the electronic marquees. We did that very early in the process. But you can see the different areas of how we spent the money, not only in the fiscal year 2018 or 2017-18, but the prior years, adding up to the about 50% of the authorization that we have received. Again, these just going through the rest of the categories and just in a little bit more detail. And then just again, in the interest of time, here are the actual projects that were part of all of those dollars. So you can see where we spent a great deal of, you can see a long list of technology needs, and there are varying degrees or magnitude of dollars for each of those projects, but many of those include replacement projects or local area network improvements, increased bandwidth on the campuses. You can see the modernization efforts. We had the tail end of the Desert Sky Middle School project. We completed that. We had the beginning or initial phases of Arrowhead. You'll see Arrowhead on this list again a year from now. We had some White Fleet replacements and some bus replacements. We had a small amount of money that we spent on copier replacements. We continued our initiatives through our energy conservation program. And then we had a lot of building improvements, roofing, weatherproofing, we call most people call painting, and some resurfacing projects as well. So we were very busy. We spent just under $20 million in last fiscal year on those various projects that you see outlined there. And then finally, also required is how we spent our M&O override, and we have to also indicate how we plan to spend it this year. You'll see that there's not much of a variation to the categories from year to year. Again, because most of this is committed to ongoing expenses. A lot of it is in salary or class size reduction categories. And just, I guess, worth noting, this is at the 15%, where prior to the last authorization of the M&O override, we were at 10%. So no increase over the amount, but there was an increase in our budget, as you might recall, as a result of Prop 123 and some other initiatives. So that's why you see a slight increase in the amount from $25 million that we spent last year to $27 million we plan to spend this year. Again, with the governor's plan for 20% increase by 2020 and some of the other things that have increased with inflationary funding. And I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the bond and override report.
Do board members have questions? Okay, no questions. Thank you, Mr. Miglerino, for those 3 reports. And we are moving on to item 3D, ADE letter grades.
Thank you, President Frank, members of the governing board. It is truly my pleasure tonight to give a report on the ADE letter grades. These came out officially Friday. Last Friday, I think Mary Beth and I were maybe one of 10 people still here at the district office waiting for them to push them out. And there's the presentation, so now I can start. And when they did, we immediately notified all the principals, and then later in the evening, Monica sent out an email to all staff showing in the letter grades. Just a little reminder of what the structure of the letter grades looks like. Again, it's A through F, with A being excellent and then highly performing and then on down to failing. The letter grades here, this shows you what the components are and what the structure is. So there's a different structure for K-8s than there is for high schools. K-8 schools are 30% on proficiency, 50% on growth, 10% on how your EL kids did, and then 10% on a group of measures called acceleration and readiness measures. The high school is a little bit different weighting. Specifically notice that it's still 30% proficiency, but only 20% growth. If you remember back when the state board had a committee that looked at this, they had strong input to, at some point, the relative weight between proficiency and growth needs to change. At some point in high school, I need to have these kids proficient. Growth is good, but I need to have them proficient. And these were post-secondary members of the committees that wanted the kids to come out and be ready to go into their institutions. So again, 10% on how the EL kids do in high school, but high schools have a graduation rate component and a college and career readiness indicator component, which is made up of several indicators for both college readiness and several more indicators for career readiness. The big difference in the structure this year, you see it marked through actually on this slide, is they took the AIM Science proficiency out of the proficiency component, so that now is only ELA and math for both AZ Merit and the MSAA test. Here's another summary of those changes that happened year over year. Again, removed science proficiency. They added a participation component, and it's a little bit different than how they did AIMS. If you remember back in the old letter day grade, if you didn't have 95% proficiency, you could not get an A. You could only get a B. They did it different here. What they did is said if you're below 95%, then they're going to add numbers to the denominator to make the denominator 95% of your kids. So it's like basically adding a bunch of zero test results to your scores. We had all but one school at 95% or above, and that school was very close. They were within a percentage point, and so it did not hurt them. So this is what they did do with the science results this year. In the third bullet, they added bonus points for AIM Science proficiency, and this was basically how did your school perform relative to the state proficiency rate. And lastly, they reduced the minimum in count from 20 kids to 10 kids. That's for identifying subpopulations or groups of kids that they will count for the test. So here are the results. I'll linger here for just a second. As you all know, the results for the most part, you can see lots of good news, maybe a couple of obvious bad news points. We do now have one D school. And one piece of bad news that we don't see up here is I had not filtered on Vista Peak on Friday, so I didn't even pull that one. And because they've always been non-rated, Vista Peak did get a letter grade of an F. We are starting to look at their data and how they got that letter grade, and my department, Mary Beth Highland, and I will have already identified data issues and errors and questions around how can we rate this school when they don't have 10 kids in any class. I think they ended up with 10 kids that had a test result for fourth grade. Seven of them were AZ Merit and 3 are MSAA, but no other grade level had 10 kids. They have no 10 kids a subpopulation anywhere, and there's lots of other smaller issues, but we're working on actually an appeal for that, which we'll have to turn in by October 25th. But the good news on here, I think, also jumps out to you. There are 12 schools on here that improved their letter grade either from a B to an A or a C to a B. We have a high school with an A on here, and all high schools are either A or B. And the distribution then looks like this. This is year over year, the number of schools on the left, and then the percent on the right. When I take that one F out, which we plan to do, the distribution will be the percentage distribution will be on the right, like it shows on the right, with 95% of our schools at an A or B. This is how our schools actually did. I'm going to just show you 3 sets of points: proficiency points, growth points, and total points. This is what our schools look like in terms of proficiency points. So there's lots of numbers up there. I don't expect you to have anyone jump out to you, so I'll make it jump out to you. Legend Springs had the highest proficiency points, 29.61 out of 30 points in the whole district. And here's 4 other schools that had 27 or higher out of 30 proficiency points for the whole district. So I would probably give these schools a shout out, but it might come off better at pre-K-12 than here tonight, because there'll be schools there. This is what growth points look like. Again, it's going to jump out at you. When I press it, Paseo Hills had 48.79 out of 50 growth points. That's amazing. That's fantastic. And here's 4 more schools that had 44 or more out of the 50 points. And you can see this is where you start to see charter shine and come through, as well as some of the higher end schools too. And finally, here's the total points earned by school. Can you guess which one it is? Sierra Verde had 95.8% of their points possible. We could do a shout out there. There's a principal in here that was there last year. And here you see 3 other schools that had 95 or better. Maybe 94 or better. Which was great cut. And then down to the very bottom of this page, kind of just for your information and interest, you can see what the actual cuts were for going from an A to a B and a B to a C, etc.
If you go back to that slide there,
sure.
you notice too the other high schools were really close for the cut to move up. 2 principals were complaining about it over the Friday night lights. Only missed it by 1/10. So our other high schools are getting closer too.
That's correct. All right. And just finally, some of the communication items we have planned. As I said, Monica has already sent an email out to all staff. She does plan a special edition of the Deer Valley Voice. Usually include a note from Dr. Finch in that. There'll be stuff on the website. There's stuff on my portal page. We'll have the list of the grades and the AD information and FAQs. And then, of course, social media. And finally, we got a pop presentation this week, and then interface in the future, which by then probably a board member will be able to present this data themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Smith. And again, congratulations and big thank yous to all of our teachers, administrators, and all of the district office personnel who support those administrators. And really, that's wonderful news. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. All right, everyone's favorite time of the evening, public comments. And there are, drum roll, no public comments. So we will move on. Ms. Tweedy, you won't have to admonish anyone.
I'm going to skip the admonishment.
Okay.
Do you want to just read it just for fun? No.
No.
Okay.
All right, so moving on to the consent agenda, and I will need a motion.
I move that the governing board approve consent agenda items A through H.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we have an electronic? Okay. Well, stand by. We have to vote electronically, too. Oh, there it is. And since we all voted aye, it should come up, motion carries 4-0. Excellent. Okay. Our next item is action item 6A.
I move that the governing board approves all employee out-of-state travel per governing board policy GCCE.
Second.
Any questions, discussion on this item? You have a question, Ms. Tweedy?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
go ahead.
Dr. Finch, when are we going to be having our discussion about a travel budget and
Yep, you're thinking like I'm thinking. October is when that data comes in. So Mr. M is working on that. He's going to gather it and compare it to our neighbors, and then we'll talk about the kind of the plan, the concept that you guys are after, and but I wanted to kind of go off of what our neighbors are doing and kind of start with that. So I'm saying December probably.
So what I'm voting on tonight, whatever we come up with for a budget, or if we come up with limiting the number of trips any particular person can take, if I approve this tonight, it will count against whatever we decide. Like it's going to be retroactive.
Count towards.
Correct. I'm looking at long-term plan here. Yes. Yep.
So whatever we come up with is going to be retroactive. Okay, thank you.
Going forward. Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And hopefully everyone's aye matches their electronic votes. Did it come up? Okay. And motion should carry 4-0. All right, action item 6B.
I move that the governing board approve the proclamation declaring Thursday, October 25th, 2018 as Lights of After School Day of recognition and celebration in the Deer Valley School District.
Second.
Any discussion?
I think they should move like that way. They're way over there.
I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
You have to
Aye.
read it
I
first.
have to read
Aye.
it first. Oh, I
Yeah.
thought I got to read it afterwards.
No,
Am I
no.
doing this backwards?
No, you-
Okay, well, I apologize.
Might have a change
So-
of heart once they rehear it.
Then I'll do my best dramatic reading so no one changes their mind. And thank you to Community Ed for coming tonight and sitting through the first part of the meeting. All right, so the Governing Board Proclamation. Whereas Deer Valley Unified School District stands firmly committed to quality after-school programs and opportunities because they provide safe, challenging, and engaging learning experiences that help children develop social, emotional, physical, and academic skills, support working families by ensuring their children are safe and productive after the regular school day ends, build stronger communities by involving students, parents, business leaders, and adult volunteers in the lives of young people, thereby promoting positive relationships among youth, families, and adults, engage families, schools, and community partners in advancing the welfare of our children, and whereas Deer Valley Unified School District has provided significant leadership in the area of community involvement in the education and well-being of our youth, grounded in the principle that quality after-school programs are key to helping our children become successful adults, and whereas Lights On After School, the national celebration of after-school programs held this year on Thursday, October 25th, 2018, promotes the importance of quality after-school programs in the lives of children, families, and communities, and whereas more than 28 million children in the U.S. have parents who work outside the home, and 15.1 million children have no place to go after school, and whereas many after-school programs across the country are facing funding shortfalls so severe that they are being forced to close their doors and turn off their lights, and therefore be it resolved that Deer Valley Unified School District urges the citizens of Maricopa County to ensure that every child has access to a safe, engaging place where the lights are on after school, and be it further resolved that Governor Doug Ducey enthusiastically endorses Lights On After School and is committed to innovative after-school programs and activities that ensure that the lights stay on and the doors stay open for all children after school. Therefore, I, Jenny Frank, Governing Board President of Deer Valley Unified School District, do hereby proclaim October 25th, 2018 as Lights On After School Day of recognition and celebration in the Deer Valley Unified School District, and urge all stakeholders to become familiar with the services and benefits offered by the community education programs in this community.
Yay, I can clap now.
Keep like that? I didn't catch part of it. No.
Didn't they like stand up or something?
I'm sorry, Miss Tweedy. You can just watch the archive video if you weren't paying attention. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Again,
Any opposed?
there was voting from the floor out there. Just saying.
All right. So motion carries 4-0. All right. And thank you again
Thank
to
you,
all of
Community Ed.
our wonderful community ed employees for the excellent job you do every day.
Are they excused now?
They can.
Now, you can stay for the rest,
We should.
or you're free to go.
Get up early. Those
Don't let
lights
'em
come on
leave.
early, too.
That's the only way
They
we
want to
can
make
keep
sure
the
that they're
crowd.
there when the lights come on, right?
Yeah. It's lights out, not lights on.
Proclamation is signed, sealed, and delivered.
Down to 5 people. No.
Okay, so we are then moving on to action item 6C, the addenda pre-approvals. Can I get a motion?
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the addenda as presented.
Second.
Are there any questions on this item?
I had a question. How come, I was curious about the science liaison. I think it is. I don't have it up. Hold on. If you know what I'm talking about.
You know what the question was?
Yes. Okay, I have it. It is science liaison.
Okay.
I was curious why that falls outside of contractual duties.
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, we have a 7th grade science teacher and an 8th grade science teacher who have taken on some additional responsibilities to support all 7th grade science and all 8th grade science in professional development. It's outside of their job duties because it is supporting all 7th grade teachers in science, all 8th grade teachers in science.
Are these teachers at a school or are they CI or curriculum?
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, they are teachers at a campus, at a middle school campus. I believe one of them is at Deer Valley Middle School. I'd have to find out where the other one is.
No, that's. I was just curious if. Okay.
They're school-based.
So they're not in the curriculum department getting
No.
paid to be a
They're
science liaison.
school-based
Okay, I get it.
teachers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Please vote electronically. And the motion carries 4-0. All right, so action item 6D, approval of annual financial report.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the annual financial report for fiscal year 2017-18.
Second.
And there is a presentation, Mr. McLarino?
President Frank, yes, there is. Members of the board, Dr. Finch. So there is a lot of work that goes into the annual financial report. I'd be remiss not to recognize Ms. Mock, our Director of Finance, and her staff for putting all this information together. It gets kind of summarized into the state forms, which we have made available to you and would require your signatures pending your consideration this evening. And then we even further distilled it down to a handful of slides to be able to share with you. So here are the highlights of the annual financial report. And overall spending was down about $5 million. Notably, our classroom site fund spending increased due to the change that was made in the spring to commit more of our classroom site fund to teacher salaries. And to make that change for not only last year, but for the years moving forward. We had a small decrease on the M&O side of $1.5 million, again, due to the declining enrollment that we mentioned before. And then a considerable decline in capital spending because we had some Prop 123 money that we had identified in the previous year that got carried forward into fiscal year 17. So we're just comparing an inflated amount due to Prop 123 to what has become our new normal in terms of capital spending. Again, the overall M&O spending down $1.5 million, just about 0.8%, again, as a result of the student decline. Our projected carry forward in the Gold Book was just over $1 million, but as a result of finalizing the annual financial report we now know that to be $1.7 million. So that's going to also add to the budget revision that we will make during this school year for this year's budget. And so that'll be something that we will look forward to. The instructional amount, because the Auditor General used to publish off of the annual financial report or the general ledger that we send to them, would publish the classroom spending percentage. So we like to share that. It would remain constant at 60%. We have a couple graphs here to be able to evidence how the money was spent within the various categories. Worth noting, general administration, our function 2300, had a fairly significant increase. And again, that has to do with our retiree benefit. It increased over $300,000 from $3.1 million to $3.44 million. And that is paying for that continuing benefit that we offer to reimburse our retirees that meet that criteria of having that benefit extended to them, of reimbursing them for their health care expenses through Medicare eligibility. Transportation expenses increased almost 5%, and that was in large part to having to use contracted services due to the labor shortage or driver shortage that we have. As just a reminder, about 3 months before maybe 4 months before the end of the school year, we had such an issue covering spring sports that we started to contract out all those AIA spring sports to cover those routes. And so that came at a premium for us. That is continuing as we speak today because we still have not been able to, even with the salary increases, we have not been able to fill the vacancies that we have with bus drivers. So if you know of anybody that might be interested in a second career or I don't know if it's moonlighting because it's during the day, but whatever that would be called, a second job, and they'd love to drive a bus, we'd love to train them. So that's our shameless plug there, looking for drivers wherever we can find them. And then the college credit exam incentive, and as well as results-based funding, are new funds, and the plans have not been finalized as we discussed previously. So college credit by exam is for all the students that get a 3 or higher on the advanced placement test. And we are having that information verified. Dr. Smith was kind enough to share that we compared our College Board results with what ADE calculated, and we have sent that to the Department of Education because we show that we qualify for more of the college career or college credit by exam funding than we actually received from their accounting of it. So we are in the process of trying to verify that and then come up with a finalized plan. And I mentioned the framework of the results-based funding that we talked about earlier. Here is the actual form, just clipping out the detail of how the expenditures were. And what's interesting here is you can actually see the percent increase or decrease on the far right column within the various categories. And so there's some shifting around within the dollars within those various categories. You can see, again, an increase within that 2300 function of 4.2%. That was in large part, actually solely due to the retiree benefit. If it weren't for that, there would actually be a decline within general administration. So it's a little bit misleading. You can see also third from the bottom, the pupil transportation that I just mentioned before. Went up from $9.9 million to just under $10.4 million in expenditures comparing year over year. So this is really what the pie chart would have looked like last year when we shared this information with you, and essentially the big changes here are that the general administration, the instructional support went down 1%. So it was 2% in fiscal year 17. You're going to see it's going down to 1% for fiscal year 18. And student support went up 1%. So it was 8% in fiscal year 17. It goes up to 9% for fiscal year 18. But more importantly, even with the infusion of the new monies that were part of fiscal year 18's budget with Prop 123 and some of the things that aren't realized, because remember the 20 by 2020 and all that, that's in this year's budget, which you have to wait a year to get those results. But all that other new money that we received, inflationary funding, Prop 123 money and everything, we pretty much distributed in the same way we did in fiscal year 17. So here's what it looks like for fiscal year 18. Again, the only percentage changes in instructional support and student support traded 1% between each other. The other categories remained, again, in a rounded whole number, they remained the same. So I know that's a lot of information in a very short amount of time, but I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding our annual financial report. I should note that as we have done each year, now that, this is required by statute to be submitted by October 15th. Once it gets submitted, everybody has to submit theirs, and then we do some comparison with our comparable data, our comparable districts, to be able to look at data and see how others are spending their dollars as well. When that becomes available, we'll be able to share that with the board as well.
So in the next update, I would appreciate knowing the dollar amount that we've spent on contracted transportation services, as well as the number of unfilled driver positions that we currently have. If that could be, if you know it off the top of your head. If you don't, then if that could be provided in an update.
I do know it off the top of my head. We'll include it in the update as well. It was over, yeah, I did know it off the top of my head. I want to say it was $1 million of that $10 million was in contracted services.
Okay.
And that was a couple $100,000 increase over the previous year. 170,000 of that was just AIA contracted routes. So Arizona Interscholastic Association, so athletic-based trips. And that was only for like the last 3 months, consider it the spring sports, that 170,000. We've been doing it now for all sports, starting with this year, again, due to the driver shortage. We have, I think it's 20-some vacancies in bus driver positions, but we'll provide that information in the update.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Ms. Tweedy and then Mrs. Ordway. Ms. Tweedy.
A couple. First, the increase to administrative spending, and you were saying it was the retiree reimbursement for, does that account for the total increase then? It's all because of that?
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, yes. In fact, if it weren't for that, there would be a decline in general administration.
Okay, good. And then the next thing I was going to ask is, it was along the lines of what you'd said. Is the increase in transportation with contractual services, is that being offset by the amount we're carrying forward because we're not filling positions? Or are we, do you understand what I'm asking?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I believe, yes, it is offset by the fact that we don't have the labor cost to run those routes, but we're paying a premium for those routes greater than the offset.
So it's more expensive to hire the contractual service than if you filled the position. So I'm just curious if there's any type of plan to work on an incentive to fill those positions, because it is costly to the district to have them unfilled. Do we have any kind of plan in the works for that?
We are looking at several different strategies to try and fill those positions, including even contracting out the position so that a contracted person would be in our vehicle providing that service as well. So yes, we are looking at many different options to try and do this in the most cost-effective way. The problem that we have, or that anybody has, and this is not unique to Deer Valley, by the way, is that with the increase to minimum wage, there's just not a differential in the hourly rate for somebody to want to have the responsibility of being a bus driver.
Well, that's what I guess I'm thinking is we're going to have to pay more because we're always going to need bus drivers.
We're going to have to look at paying more than minimum wage, even though minimum wage has gone up.
And the starting hourly wage for a bus driver is above minimum wage, even the $12 minimum wage when it does get increased to that amount.
Mm.
But it's just not enough of a differential for the responsibility and the credential that they have to have. Now, we train them to do that, but most people would elect to go somewhere else. And as you may have seen in some of the media reports, some of the big employers have decided that they're not going to adhere to just a minimum wage that's established by the state. They're going to exceed that. So Amazon just announced that all their positions will be $15 an hour. We do not pay $15 an hour for a starting bus driver.
We have two other variables that are happening as well. As the economy improves, that labor bracket thins, and so we have less customers that are available. Now, the second part, because obviously my mother was a bus driver for 20 years, that's a unique...
Does she need a job?
I've already asked.
Okay.
She's in
Just checking.
calling her out of retirement. The second part is it's not 9 to 5, and so it fits a certain type of person. So that also makes it difficult as well. You have to be an early bird and a late person, and so it only fits a certain clientele. So that even makes it more difficult. So, and as Mr. Migliano was saying, we're not the only ones in this boat, and I don't see a way out that we haven't thought of already. We're stealing ideas from our neighbors. They're stealing them from us, and we're changing bus drivers and stealing from liberating bus drivers.
you.
Sorry, but yeah, it's not going away. And I think if we offered, added $10 more to it, I think it wouldn't make any difference. I think it'd still be shorter. We still have a shortage.
We might have less of a shortage.
Well, and then the other thing being, and I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. So, have we considered too finding alternatives to using a bus so they don't need the same license to drive it, and then you would have a bigger pool of applicants? Or I don't know if that's cost effective or cost a fortune.
You can go.
To do more
they
vans
did
and-
loosen the regulations with vans. That's helped, but we're still moving, hundreds of kids or thousands of kids. So vans, we'd have to have a small army of vans. But again, I think it's still related to that slice of the workforce.
So you mentioned using contract labor in our buses. So I'm assuming that means that the contracted transportation includes the bus plus the driver. Am I understanding that correctly?
President Frank, so the numbers I quoted on the AIA trips, we contracted out the entire route. So that was their vehicle and their driver. We're also looking at contracted labor in our vehicles as an option, and looking at many options. Somebody mentioned different credentials. So for certain trips like McKinney-Vento and some other trips like that, we're considering a new position, a van driver position, so that it doesn't have to be a CDL bus driver on some of those routes, because as Dr. Finch mentioned, there's been some agreed upon interpretation of what counts as a route mile and does it have to be in a yellow school bus per se. We are exploring all of those to be able to try and recapture as many of the bus driving, those that have the credential, and put them on a regular route.
Okay.
I just
Right.
wanted to have a comparison of what we're spending how we spent it, as opposed to if we would have had the normalcy of driving our own kids. So what would the differential be, if you can do that? Not right this second. Just
sorry.
when you do that report, I wanted to see
I'm
a
sorry, I was
comparison.
Taking a note.
Oh, okay. I was like, well,
We
we're
thought you
used
were
to.
calculating.
Well, we're used to you like.
He's
you
good,
know-
but he's not that good.
Oh, he is. Give him 5 minutes. I'm sure he would be. But
He'll
anyway,
have
just
he'll have
so
it by
we
the
can
end of the
see
meeting.
what we're working
Yeah.
with.
Give him 10
And then
minutes.
all of this, because I don't want to go too deep into alternative paying bus drivers during this part, but is this also being spoken at the NST? Are you guys throwing that stuff around there too?
President Frank, Ms. Ordway, no, we haven't had this conversation. I mean, They're aware of the annual financial report. We shared that
Right.
this afternoon in our meeting, and the highlights obviously, but we haven't got into any specific details about a future plan.
Okay.
There's been a lot
I
of
just
discussion.
I thought last year you guys were talking about it, so I didn't know if there was some input to use yet.
Yeah, this has been an ongoing discussion for more than a year.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we have contemplated is changing their calendar, because one of the things that we don't compete on a straight hourly rate comparison is that embedded in our classified employment agreements are days that they're paid for that they don't have to work. So during the intersession, the fall break days that we just had, those are included in their contracted amount. If we were to remove them from their contracted work calendar, we could increase their hourly pay. It'd be no more money or less money, but their hourly rate of pay would go up. It would affect them for things like overtime and things of that nature that are calculated based off that hourly rate, but it might help us recruit new drivers. Wouldn't change any pay that would be paid to existing drivers, except in overtime situations. But so we're looking at creative ways of being able to try and make it look more attractive, because we have an issue that needs to be addressed.
Thank you.
Mrs. O'Brien?
Yes,
Questions?
thank you. We could go back to the administration costs. If you could tell us in the next update, Mr. Miglerino, or when it's convenient, what the administration costs would have been minus those retiree employee benefits in the update, I would appreciate that.
And the information is on this line. I know it's in standard GIMP font, but that $4.379 million, which is fourth line down, 1, 2, 3, 4, would be reduced by $344,000. So it would be just over $4 million. The prior year we spent $4.2 million. So we would have reduced our general administration expenses by about $200,000 if it weren't for the increase in the retiree benefit.
Thank you, sir, and you are that good.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 You have everyone's vote recorded?
No, my computer went to sleep. I
Oh.
apologize.
Okay.
Yep.
So the motion carries 4-0. Action item 6E.
6E. I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the Arizona School Facilities Board preventative maintenance plan for 17-18.
Second. Mr. Miglerino.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, I'll be brief with this report just because it's required for us to do. It requires 3 signatures, none of which are mine. So it requires the board president, it requires the superintendent, and it requires our director of facilities to sign on this. In order to get the board president's signature, it has to be approved by the board. But I don't know what anybody does with this information, quite frankly. So it is required by statute. So kind of just in summary, they list a series of tasks related to various areas of our facilities. And you'll see that in some schools, it ranges from 0% to 100% that we complete the task. And that's typically due to if we are doing a specific project at that school, we end up doing the task, but maybe we don't have it as a regularly scheduled task that we do at every campus. So that's why you see the variation. So when it comes to HVAC tasks, we completed 51% of those tasks, roofing tasks 88%, electrical tasks 10%. I always like to pick on this one because one of those tasks is to verify that all the outlets are working. we wait for somebody to plug something in and tell us if the outlet doesn't work, and then we go work on it. We don't have the manpower, quite frankly, to test every outlet. But we do have a work order system that works really well. So if they find an outlet that doesn't work, they submit a work order, and then we fix it. That'll be plumbing task at 43%. Surface tasks, this is painting and whatnot, 76%. Special systems tasks would be 49%. And then special equipment, different than special systems, which would be attached to the building like fire panels and things of that nature. But special equipment tasks, 57%. So that's the report in a nutshell.
Are there any questions on this report?
It was an awesome report. I have no questions.
All right. Then I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 4-0. Which brings us to item 6F.
I move that the governing board approve intergovernmental agreement between Deer Valley Unified School District and the Maricopa County Air Quality Department for the fiscal year 18 state clean diesel program sub award contingent on final approval from Maricopa County.
Second.
And Mr. Miglino, do you have information to share with us on this item?
President Frank, yes, I would just like to briefly recognize our transportation folks for writing this grant. This may sound familiar to you if you feel like you're having a deja vu moment. Fiscal year 18 is the federal fiscal year 18, and fiscal year 17 DERA grant. We also were a recipient of that as well. Again, thanks to our transportation folks for writing that grant. We received 7 buses as a result of that award of $260,000. This is just under $150,000 for 4 buses. The one thing that I was reminded today about is this is an IGA, and there are some additional efforts that need to be done between the grant is actually a federal EPA grant, but there are some matching dollars with the Department of Environmental Quality that are also a part of this that the Maricopa County Air Quality Division has to work out. So it's contingent on final approval because we were notified that we are a recipient, but it has to go through the process. And because we only have one governing board meeting in October so that we don't delay being able to act on this, our board meeting didn't coincide with the County Board of Supervisors meetings. It's going to be, we're asking for this to be contingent on final approval from Maricopa County.
And I believe there's a timeline involved by which the money has to be spent, so there's a timeline for ordering the buses and so on.
President Frank, you're exactly correct. And because of the long lead time on being able to get a bus, it does have to fall within the timelines. We were kind enough, or actually Maricopa County was kind enough to get an extension for the FY17 award. There will be no such extension for the FY18 award, so time will be of the essence for us to get this order placed.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Miglorino on this item? Okay, so I would just like to say that I will be recusing myself from voting on this item because I work for the Air Quality Department, although I do not work in the grants program, and have nothing to say about that. But because I do work for the department, I will abstain. So I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And 1 abstention. So 3 ayes, 1 abstention. So the motion carries. And we'll look forward to hearing that the final agreement has been signed off by ADEQ and the Board of Supervisors, so we can get the ball rolling, or the buses rolling, perhaps I should say.
Yes.
Okay, so item 6G.
I move that the governing board suspend governing board policy BGB as it pertains to a first and second reading of adjustment to policy for the purpose of addressing item 6H on this agenda.
Second.
Okay, Dr. Finch, would you like to speak to this item?
Do we need to, oh, sorry, never mind.
Sure, I'll take a stab at it. Policy IHB is, again, up against the timeline. We need to have it done by November 1, and we don't have another October meeting. So your policy, governing board policy, as we've talked to in the past, require 2 readings. By suspending it, you'll read it one time and then approve it, and then we can meet the Department of Ed deadline of November 1. There's no real significant changes to it, just more procedural in IHB. But you need to approve the suspension of that governing board policy first before you can approve IHB.
Okay, questions for Dr. Finch? Okay.
I'm just curious. The way this reads, does this mean we're only suspending it for addressing 6H, or are we going to have to unsuspend this in the future?
Correct. No, it's just in relationship to, because I believe that's what your motion read. It's for AHB, addressing IHB.
Mrs.
Okay.
O'Brien?
No, I was
Okay.
just smiling.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, hearing no further questions, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And now we can move on to item 6H.
I move that the governing board adopt revised policy IHB special instruction programs as presented.
Second.
Dr. Galligan?
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch. As Dr. Finch mentioned, policy IHB has been changed, but not substantially. It is mostly procedural aspects, including one that requires the district to file a certification form that verifies that our governing board has approved policies and procedures in accordance with statutory changes, and that is due by November 1st. So the actual changes are more procedural than anything else.
Are there questions for Dr. Galligan on this item?
I have none.
All right, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Sorry. Aye.
I don't see it. Oh, okay. Waiting for the electronic version. Okay, motion carries 4-0. Yeah, so moving
move-
on to item 6I.
I move that the governing board conduct a second reading and adopt revised policy BCB, board member conflict of interest.
Second.
Okay, so we did, Mrs. Fisher is not here tonight. She did provide some notes on this item. Dr. Finch, did you speak with her regarding,
I did. And
could you,
I told her that I would give each board member her notes, and then they could evaluate and discuss using her perspective and make a decision on the continuation of the policy, or you could also wait until she returns by suspending it or holding an abeyance, whatever it's called. But you have permission to move forward. There are enough. There you have a quorum. So if you want to use her notes and or not change a thing, you can do that as well.
Mrs. Frank, I read the notes, and I prefer the version without the notes.
okay, thank you, Mrs. Ordway. Mrs. O'Brien?
I'm fine moving forward with the version as provided by Arizona School Boards Association.
Ms. Tweedy?
I'm fine with moving forward.
All right, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We're voting too fast for you tonight, Sheila. It's
She's
taking a
typing
minute.
in
Okay.
fast.
All right. So electronic vote is up. Motion carries 4-0.
I move that the governing board conduct a second reading and adopt revised policy IL, evaluation of instructional programs.
Second.
Okay, so again, we've been provided with Mrs. Fisher's notes on this item. References for board members.
I am going to go with the copy that was provided with us minus notes.
Okay, so no changes, Mrs.
No
O'Brien?
changes.
I would also like to move forward with no notes, and I also would, in addition, explain that I think that moving forward with the version as provided by Arizona School Board Association does save us expense from having these to be reviewed by our attorney, because as soon as we start making changes, then we need another set of eyes on them to make sure we haven't done something to bring them out of compliance with this Arizona state statute. So I'd like to move forward.
Okay. And I don't disagree with your assessment of that. I did want to make sure that Mrs. Fisher's notes were provided so that her voice was heard, even though she was not present at the
Oh, no,
meeting.
and I absolutely wanted to hear her voice. I just wanted as an explanation for going for,
Correct.
to explain my vote and my perspective was really that explanation. I absolutely think that every board member's
Oh, no,
viewpoint.
my comment wasn't a criticism
Okay.
of your comment.
I just- well, I didn't want-
I completely agree
I didn't
with
want anybody
you.
to think I was criticizing anybody, so just explaining my vote.
So this is a record meeting for us. No one is criticizing anyone tonight. All right. Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien. So, Ms. Tweedy.
Add notification to board of percent. I don't even understand the note.
So I take it you wish to go with the...
Does anybody know what it means?
I do not.
No, but I think that for me, the ASBA policy that we were given makes a lot of sense, and I don't feel that there was any needs for alteration.
Okay.
A percentage
Okay.
would change every year, so it would be more like in an AMG or something. That's too
Okay.
specific in my opinion.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no further questions or comments, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Wait for it. There it is. Cast your vote electronically. Motion carries 4-0. So moving on to item 6J.
I move that the governing board conduct a second reading and adopt revised policy IMD, school ceremonies and observance.
Second.
Okay. So you have been provided with the notes. Is everyone good with voting on the policy as presented?
I am good with it as presented.
Okay.
And I just want to also point out that I've read the notes. So,
Just
I
wanna
am
let
as
you
well.
know You had stated you had.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we all had. Okay. So then if there's no further discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Item 6K.
I move that the governing. Are you sure it's not L? I go from that, and the next one I have is something about
We're on K.
I'm sorry, am I on the wrong
bullying
one?
and harassment.
We're on K. School ceremonies and observances.
we're on
or did we
K.
already do that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I move that the governing board conduct a second reading of and adopt revised policy IMD, school ceremonies and observances.
Second.
You just did that one, wouldn't it?
We just did that one. So we liked it a lot.
Yep.
Jim, I see your
Okay.
face.
I'm sorry. So we're on
And in big
L.
print.
That was IMD.
Okay. So
No, you're just making
no,
the
it was
rest
my
of us nuts.
mistake.
Just read it
I
twice.
apologize.
I move that the governing board conduct a second reading and adopt policy JICK, student
Oh.
bullying, harassment, and intimidation.
Second. For the first time.
Okay. Any discussion on this item?
No.
No. Okay. Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 4-0. And now that brings us to our last action item, 6M. And I believe I got the right one this time.
That's okay. I thought I was losing my mind.
No, it was my fault. Apologies.
I thought, did I just imagine myself reading it and it didn't really happen? I move that the governing board conduct a second reading and adopt revised policy JJIB, interscholastic sports.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this item?
No.
No.
Okay. All right, hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Nope.
There's a little box in the top that lets you change
No,
it.
she closes.
Oh.
Yeah, if it gets closed before you realize it.
So the motion carries 4-0. All right. Okay, so moving on to our discussion items. So 7A, proposed ASBA bylaw changes. And Mrs. O'Brien, I believe you had contacted me to have this placed on the agenda. I know we all received, or I'm sure we all received emails from ASBA.
Right, we all received, I believe, an email as well as
Mailed.
I think a hard copy
it all
as well.
comes in a
Yeah,
hard
we
copy,
did.
and and so for at one point ASBA's bylaws were getting changed quite frequently because their voting standard for changing them was too low. So they changed the bar for changing bylaws, and then they made it so high that now they can't get any bylaws changed again. They don't have the participation from 2/3 of the members, even though they've changed it to voting electronically. Even they are getting better every year. So this year they, as y'all have read, have decided to just put forth these 2 bylaws to make them very focused. One of them is to change the bar to 50, a majority of those who vote. And then the other one is, I believe, on the equity. But we have to vote as a board, yay or nay on the bylaws in order for Sheila to register our vote. So it had to come to us for discussion and then a vote next meeting.
It'll come back as an action item at the next meeting.
Correct. And then I think we have to register by December 5th, our vote, if I recall correctly. I would recommend we vote yes on allowing them to change the bar for the bylaw change, is just my opinion, so that we can make appropriate changes. And that is a member vote again, but my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. O'Brien. Mrs. Ordway, do you have any thoughts to share on this item?
Not on this item, but I do have thoughts to share.
Oh, that was a leading question, wasn't it?
You knew it was.
Okay.
I had a question for Ms. O'Brien. So is this coming back to a vote, or?
Yeah, it'll come back as an
Oh,
action
okay.
item at the
Okay,
next
thank
meeting.
you.
Sorry, didn't mean to answer for Mrs. O'Brien, but
You did a lovely job.
thank you.
Wow, we used the
Aren't
word
we an
lov-
agreeable bunch tonight? Okay.
Lovely. We used the
All
word
right.
lovely.
We haven't got to the admonishment yet, so
Oh, yes, the
it too shall
admonishment.
pass.
So,
Saving it all
item
for that.
7B, the moment you've all been waiting for, the revision of the public comment admonishment. Dr. Finch, take it away.
All right, I'm the guy that gets blamed for this, so I'll start taking the blame right out of the chute.
And we'll allow you to.
My theory was that shorter is better, but that we would still have the written one on the back that they would sign. But when we read it out loud, that would be shorter, and maybe more appropriate would be the right word.
So in theater, we used to call that less is more.
Less is more. But I've been getting feedback pretty much from all the board members. I think I've heard from everyone, and there seems to be a concern. One is if we shorten it, it may have to be reviewed and will cost us dollars to have it reviewed every time we have an attorney look at it. The second part is if we miss anything in here that's really important. That's why it grew from previously. And so that being said, I talked to the attorney about this, and she said, Denise Lowbritton said, it actually is your right as a board. You can put it any way you'd like. There are no significant statute arrangements around this and deciding on what you can and cannot say. Just can't discriminate, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's some guidance, but you do have a lot of freedom, is my point. And so that being said, Ms. Tweedy took a stab at it and scratched some, shortened it out, scratched out some of the, struck out some of the words, and I think I'm actually like it. So now it's Ms. Tweedy against everyone. So so-
That's never happened.
I would
That's
like
never
to
happened,
just
so-
admonish you guys with my revised version.
right.
And then justify the cuts. No.
And it's attached in board docs for you to take a peek at. And again, then so she doesn't have to take a drink of water while she's reading it between
So
speech.
the one thing I put, I took this section after, the board invites public comments on the district's business and in general, and on any agenda item in specific. I cut the whole part after that. All speakers must observe the rules of decorum, fill out a card, and give it to the secretary, because I think we need to post this somewhere, because if they haven't done those things, they're not speaking. I mean, I'm not going to talk to anyone that didn't give a card to Sheila before the meeting, so it's kind of too late at that point. And we agree with those cuts or no?
Yeah.
Do you
Just-
want
she
one?
just
Do you
wanted
want
to-
one or the other? Or
Just wanted to make sure Mrs. O'Brien had made her mind up, didn't want to change it.
um,
Mrs. Ordway.
so if we can respond to criticism, is it to anyone or now, not just the speaker?
Autumn, are you okay with my first cut?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine with the
Okay.
top part. It was just that at the very bottom it says we may respond to criticism, but I thought maybe we want to limit it just to the speaker, not,
Well, I think it's implied that since it's an admonishment of the person speaking, it's implied that the criticism would come from the speaker.
I'm
Since
really
we're not
okay. I don't get
admonishing-
criticized, so I'm good with it. The way it's
I
written.
actually, that was one of my cuts too. I started just hacking it because no, but then I put speakers. I said speakers are limited to 3 minutes, as opposed to saying speakers must make their comments in no more than 3 minutes. I thought it kind of got the message across. And then I took out if necessary. So it just says to accommodate all speakers within the 30-minute, the board president may shorten speakers' times. Okay, good. And then on this part, I kind of thought we should take out, and this might be a sticking point, but I kind of thought we should just, say vulgarity and disruptive conduct will not be allowed, because rudeness and remarks disrespecting dignity are more of a subjective term. I mean, we can certainly tell if somebody's cussing or throwing things, but I mean, technically we could say you rolled your eyes. I mean,
What?
what might be rude to you or me? I don't know.
More, less is more.
So you want to stick with vulgarity and disruptive comments? Will not be allowed, and I'm good with whatever you said.
That's kind of a thing that would be obvious if it happened, that it wouldn't be a subjective thing, somebody's interpretation. And then remarks disrespecting dignity, I don't know. I mean, that could be defined differently by different people. So I would either suggest we have something that would be interpreted a little more consistently or not have that term.
Because remember, we're also going to still have the full one that they sign on the back of the form. So this is just the reading part. So they're actually signing the one that has all these other words in it.
Right. I just have sorry, I can save my question till the end.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Does the part I'm worried about or more concerned about, and I love doing less is more. Unfortunately, my question is about how do we inform our speakers that what they may not do is come up here and use an employee or staff's name. I mean, I love it if, obviously we all love congratulations and thanks, that we're not going to turn that down. But if you're coming to complain about your child's teacher or your child's principal, I don't think that comes across clearly, and it never has. And unfortunately, we as board members sometimes forget in those moments to stop those people from using an employee's name, and we really are required to do so. So if I love making it shorter, I just would like, as part of our either not just what they sign and what we tell them, is that you may not use an employee's name.
I have a suggestion.
Thank you.
Instead of remarks disrespecting personal dignity, remarks disrespecting specific individuals.
specific staff. 'Cause
Employees?
yeah, it has to be employees because they can
Okay.
disrespect us, unfortunately, if they want.
But it's employees.
Okay.
Right, but the employees.
Yeah, it doesn't really say that. That's a good point.
So remarks
We can work on that.
disrespecting specific employees.
That right. You could make
Yeah,
it
we could-
vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disrespecting specific employees,
Or disrespecting
or-
employees by name.
or disrespecting employees by name. Perfect.
Yeah, that's against the state statute.
That's
just saying.
wonderful.
Don't want to break the law. It's against the statute just to do that.
Right.
And-
Thank you so much.
And then I also cut out under Arizona open meeting law. We can, if somebody asks us why we're not responding, I thought we could just say the governing board cannot discuss or act on items not on an agenda.
I'd rather it continue to say Arizona
Under-
open meeting
okay.
law.
It has a little more teeth.
All right. And then
I mean, it explains to people why we can't just put anything on the agenda.
so we'll leave that one in. And then the other thing I changed, I said board members may respond to criticism. And I took out made by a speaker. I think it, we
Again, is implied. It's the
Right.
speaker.
Is implied
And-
for sure.
asked staff to review an item I left, and then I said, instead of ask that a matter be put on, I just changed it to request a future agenda item.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my changes.
That's fine.
I think it
Beautiful.
is wonderful with the modification that we just developed, and as well as adding back the under Arizona open meeting law, because I think the other thing is that folks who are not here or who've never signed that and just hear what the admonishment has read need to know that we are legally can't.
I agree with you.
So I think that was a good point.
So then you'll capture those changes. We'll bring it back to the next board meeting as an action item for a vote. And I'd like to thank all of
Yeah.
fellow board members for the collaboration on this item.
Yeah, thanks Darcy Mrs. Tweedy for doing that work.
And I would like to suggest that we track some data once we've shortened this, track some data on
Yeah.
the length of our board meetings.
Oh,
after-
please. as though.
Okay.
I
I had to say it.
Bye, though.
I did, though, just have one more suggestion is because I did cut out all of the how you get to request a meeting. Can we add under the governing board part of the page what employees or what, no, not employees, people who want to speak at meetings need to do if they want to speak?
You mean on the website?
Yeah, here.
You mean on the website?
Where do you want it added? I'm sorry.
In the governing board
On the
page.
governing board under our link.
Oh, on the website.
If you want to speak, you have
Sorry,
to
I was
get-
trying. I didn't page. I wasn't connecting to website. Thank you for that clarification.
Because
Yep,
we've occasionally
that.
had people show up to
Sure.
speak and not know they needed to come early, and they were angry that they couldn't.
And then
Okay.
they were even angrier. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So if there's no further comments, I need a motion to, for future meetings and dates are posted, so I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I
So
moved.
moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned at the record time of 8:33. The new record. Oh.
For the new year, new record this year.
And thank you all for coming and staying through.